So welcome to the podcast. I guess what we can do for the beginning is for you to walk through your background a little bit. I know you
Sure.
kind of shared it a little bit with us, but we'd love a little bit
Yeah,
more juicy details from that,
for
and
sure.
then we'll ask a bunch of questions after that.
Okay, for sure. So, yeah, at a personal level, as I mentioned, I was born and raised in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I moved to Ottawa, Canada almost 25 years ago. And yeah, shortly after moving here, I finished my high school and I went to college as a graphic designer. So I was trained in the traditional graphic design sense and started my career out in the print and branding worlds. All the while, I had a very keen interest in the web. Started at school, we were taught how to use Dreamweaver. I don't know if you all remember that tool was meant to be a WYSIWYG website builder, and it didn't work very good. And I got so frustrated with the outcomes that I taught myself CSS and HTML, and that's what caught my passion. So again, as I was working as a print designer, I was always dabbling with websites on the side. And after a couple of years, I eventually followed my passion to a local company called Real Decoy, and I joined on as a front end developer. And surprisingly enough, that's where I discovered UX design. They were an engineering led company, and to de-risk their like building process, they used these things called wireframes and did stakeholder interviews and information architecture diagrams, and that like piqued my interest. And shortly after, after a while of like front end developing, I transitioned back into a design role there. And it was like a rabbit hole, learning about UX. And then I found out about, working within a product company and really like dedicating yourself to a single project or a product. Because before that, I had worked in consulting space the whole time. And that, eventually led me to companies like Shopify and Automatic, where I worked remote before the pandemic. It was a nice thing, and I still love working remote. And then, yeah, early last year, Naz from Remix reached out to me. I'd already kind of heard about NFTs and was kind of following the Web3 journey. It was in the really early stages. And when he mentioned this opportunity to kind of dive into the world of Web3, I was on board right away. Again, we were as a company looking to launch a marketplace for selling digital wearables. And I've got three young kids that play a lot of Roblox and Fortnite, and I saw the future. I see the future in them. Like they're throwing down tons of money just for these like outfits every day, and they really cherish them. And again, I thought if I could get into this thing called Web3 at the ground level, it would be great for me to kind of grow into it that way, because it is still really early days with with Web3 and the metaverse and all that stuff.
Yeah, it is very early. And
Hmm.
like to me, you were one like if we go back to like we briefly worked together at UI, like that startup that I really enjoyed and it helped propelled my career like
Hmm.
beyond belief. But to me, if I go back to my way with you, you were kind of the first multidisciplinary designer that I had truly seen. We all like worn numerous hats, etc. But to me, when I met you, you were like that individual where, he could code, knew UX, he knew research, he knew. So every time we came up with, an idea, you were kind of going at that 360-degree angle. So that's something I always appreciated about you, that you weren't just saying, oh, it doesn't look pretty. And you were always talking about like that multidisciplinary approach. And that's how I always portrayed you after, even like in all our conversations afterwards, I always portrayed you as that individual.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that's probably rooted in my background as an artist, kind of growing up. That's kind of how I got into graphic design. I was kind of looking for a way to make money being creative and doing artistic stuff. And then I guess I've always had a technical side too. And so, yeah, necessity of working at startups is always wearing a lot of different hats. And yeah, I enjoy the process. It's all the way through. It's pretty fun.
Do you see that design is more of being on the technical side or the creative side of the thing? Like, is there? I know that there's a blend of it, but do you think that there's
Hmm.
more one way or the other?
I think, yeah, if I'm honest with myself, I think there's always a place for creativity in design, but when it comes down to being technical and doing your research and understanding your audience and creating products that have value, I guess it leans more into the technical side in reality. But like I said, there's always a place for creativity in design. In again, you're creating something of value. You want to create beautiful things because people are attracted to beautiful things. And in counter to the creative like mindset, you don't want to always reinvent the wheel for everything because again, you want to create products people can use, and they don't want to like scratch their heads figuring out how to use the thing. But yeah, there's always moments where creativity kind of pushes things over to the next level, right?
Yeah, I guess you could say creativity is required to be unique and to be an innovative experience that hasn't been done before. But then I guess the utilitarian aspect of the technical side of things, you need it to kind of fit into existing behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then therefore, well, the reason why I kind of asked this question is because I was thinking about it recently. Someone on Twitter, I forgot who it was, said that designers should face the realization that we're not really creating, for the most part, new things, and that we're just, in a sense, decorators, because we're just making the same thing again and again and again. Marketing websites, landing page, portfolios, we're making it a UI, but the UI has the same tabs, it has the same buttons, it has, a feed, a chat. It's the same thing over and over again, just tweaked. Do you see it in that light, or do you see it beyond that?
I definitely see some truth in that. And again, if you, I think, box yourself into a very narrow definition of what a designer is, you could get caught up in that, and then very soon have your job taken away by AI because the tools, I don't know about you all, I'm using like there's like a version of ChatGPT and Notion that I use like crazy now. The tools are getting like super sophisticated, and it's only a matter of time that we're going to start seeing UI design. I think I saw one the other day, but matter of time before really good ones start showing up that you can write a prompt and it'll create a UI for you. I saw Microsoft has like a graphic design AI tool that you're like, make me this graphic, and it it looks really good. And so it in a narrow definition, I believe in that. But again, as a when you're working as a designer, again, you need to be thinking about talking to customers and understanding the problem and really getting kind of deep in that regard to shape what this thing that you're going to build is, right? And so same, I mean, I guess the same can go at the engineering level. Like you can get really technical and define your project and build it to spec, but if you're not understanding the problems that you're solving, and you're not really like solving problems, you're focusing on infrastructure and stuff like that, you're not going to get good results. And so again, if you're focused on pushing pixels, that definition holds true, but you as designers, we need to like go above and beyond just the manual work. And I mean, there's a place for that. Everybody needs to start out somewhere, and as you mature as a designer, you pick up again these other skills, and you see the value in doing research and talking to people and looking at data and connecting dots and again crafting like products that have value that go beyond the pixels. And then again, having good design systems in place that come on the UI side just means that you get to spend more time thinking about the real problems and not solving problems that have already been solved like 1,000 times over, right?
Yeah, hopefully we're not bored of that. But I think sometimes people have to do that still, and
Mhm.
then they have the opportunity, once they get through a lot of that, to create something new and not something that's just been done before, just doing it differently. I
I
have a
mean,
lot of questions, but
yeah, no worries. I
Pascal, do you
love
want?
that
Yeah.
that part of the creation process as well. I mean, I still do a good bit of production work and enjoy the challenge of putting a good layout together that's visually appealing and makes a lot of sense. And so there's always place for that as well.
Go ahead, Mitch.
Okay.
You seem to have another
Yeah, I
itching
got
question.
questions.
Sure.
I was like, diving into what you were saying before through
Hmm.
your background and stuff, and
Yeah.
I have like 100 questions. So you mentioned you love remote work.
Hmm. I do. Yeah.
Why do you love remote work?
Well, Like I mentioned, I've been at it for a while now, I guess coming on 6 years. And so I've got a family, I've got 3 kids. And so when I first kind of got into remote work, I did it as a means to kind of give myself more freedom in the workday to be around as my youngest son was born. While my wife was home for maternity leave for a year, I was home with her, and in between calls, I was like around my child, and it's given basically for me personally, it's given me a lot of flexibility around my day to get all my work done, but also have time for exercising and eating healthy food at home and food that I'm happy to eat. And yeah, and so it is a lot about kind of having flexibility around my schedule and working in an environment that I enjoy and not wasting any time commuting or any of that kind of thing. Having said that, again, I do believe that like a key part of remote working is having regular touch points with your team in person where you can connect with them and build strong bonds. So at Automatic, for an example, they would have regular meetups where we would go meet in fun, like exotic locations sometimes for a week at a time. And you'd be sharing a space with your colleagues and going to dinners with them and working together with them. And in that week, I built like really strong bonds with my colleagues that again propelled us until the next meetup where we would connect again. And so that worked out really well. And now I'm in a small startup, and again, we have infrequent physical meetups where we get together and we just talk about work for like till we're sick of it. But we build those bonds in those moments. And yeah, it wasn't until yesterday, actually, or Wednesday, we went on a trip to Montreal for an event, and we spent 2 hours in the car talking. And I was like, man, those 2 hours were so productive just in physical presence. Like it's very different than kind of being behind a screen like this. And so I think ideally in the end, you need a little balance of being in person and being remote, but ultimately just having that freedom for the most part to mold my day around my schedule and not mold myself around the work schedule has been the biggest driver for me.
One thing that
yeah.
one thing that I remember about Automatic is I had interviewed for a job at one point at Automatic, and one of the
Mhm.
things that struck me was that the second round of the interview process was entirely in Slack.
Oh yeah.
No conversation. It was just pure Slack talk. And I was like, what is this? Because it was before like Automatic was already remote before
Right.
everybody went remote. So the fact that like we weren't used to that and having like a full-blown interview on Slack, no talking. It was just to see how you could translate and communicate effectively through Slack. And I was like, I was blown away that they were doing interviews like that. Like
Yeah.
it got you needed to get used to that, like chatting and communicating and so on. So it was something that I was surprised when I went through the process.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember having those that interview process as well. I had the same feeling.
Well, I was actually going to ask a question about that specifically.
Uh-huh.
Creating bonds virtually versus in person.
Hmm.
You said that it's like you couldn't create a stronger bond when you meet face to face. And I agree with that, but I don't
Hmm.
quite understand why that might be. Can you articulate maybe why that is and how in comparison to Automatic's hiring process, they're like, oh yeah, we're just gonna talk on Slack. You're not gonna see our face, you're not gonna see our body
Hmm.
language, which is 90% of the
Right.
communication.
Yeah, I mean at Automatic they had that like I guess synchronous chat like Slack interview as part of it, and then they also did kind of a test where again they'd see your thought process as you worked on a project. You would asynchronously like post updates in their internal system, and you would have conversations through comments on those posts. And so that was one way, I guess, that they got to know how people worked in their environment. And then yeah, I guess in person again, when you're working remote with these people, all you know them are as is like a little avatar on a screen until you meet them in person. And I think 9 times out of 10 the biggest shock is like how tall or short somebody is when you meet them in person. But I think in again in my experience at Automatic and other places is when you meet in person that way, you're just kind of um, paired up with these people for an extended period of time, and there's a lot of bonding through working through challenges together because the that week that we would get together would be structured with activities. I always believed just kind of more social activities were better than doing work because the work wasn't very productive in that time. But just you're working and bonding and solving challenges together, and then you're breaking bread together at dinner and lunch, and then you're going out at night together. And again, for a week at a time, all you're doing is talking work. You're getting to know each other. And so again, I just created such like amazing memories, again, traveling to all kinds of cities through the US and being out late at night with these people and having a good time. It was just, yeah, really, really special time in my life.
That's when the bonds really happen, is late at night with a couple of beers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I want to
And
shift just
yeah,
gear for a sec here, because like your career is really interesting, but you went into Web3 and
mhm,
you went and, you started working with Nas, who previously founded Canvas Pop. For those who don't know, Canvas Pop with this like print, like these big canvases on demand. And like he was one of the original founders of that
mhm.
avenue. And like, so he already knew how to grow a business, how to scale a business. What made you, is that, let me frame it. Is that one of the reasons you decided to go and try it out with Nas because he'd already founded a previous company? Or it was just you were so excited to get into Web3 and all those avenues?
I mean, his track record helped. Again, we had established a bond before we even like talked about working together, and so we would connect on a regular basis. And yeah, when he proposed kind of working together, his track record definitely both was inspirational and was a boost of confidence. Working in the startup world, again, it can be hectic, and there's a big risk in kind of joining a startup that you never know if it's gonna make it or not. And I felt a lot of certainty working with Nez based on his track record that way. And so that was part of my decision. The other part was at the time we were going through the bull market and NFTs were just exploding and there was like tons of money going around. And so on the other side, I was like, I'm getting in on this. And so I'm gonna one hand I was thinking I'm gonna make a ton of money. And we have yet to make a ton of money, but that was what another motivator. And then from the technology perspective, as I mentioned, I see this as the future. I mean, again, if you just look at in the past, the web's already gone through two like major evolutions, and we're really early in this third one. Just and in both other early stages, there were naysayers and people that couldn't see that this was the future. But one way or the other, it's happening, and it is the future. And so the best thing is to kind of embrace it early on in my mind and kind of getting at this ground level.
What exactly is it? Embracing it.
Web3? Yeah.
Yeah, like can you define what that really kind of is for those who don't know?
Yeah. So I think the best way to describe it is to kind of talk through the different evolutions of the web. So yeah, the internet, I guess, started way back in the early 70s, people kind of networking computers and sending some basic messages to each other. And it wasn't until 1990 that the first browsers and websites appeared. And so for Web 1, very basic read capabilities on the internet. You just had static websites, well, and it started helping to distribute like information in an easy way. And then it kind of hit its peak by 1994 as, websites were kind of building and JavaScript started slowly emerging and wasn't really until about 2005 that Web 2 started emerging. It came out. I don't know if you all remember, but I very distinctly remember the term Web 2 came out and there was a very distinct look and feel to it with round buttons and shadows and stuff like that. And this new phase of the internet built off its predecessor with reading capabilities, but it also introduced publishing. And so we all became publishers as, databases from a technology point of view came into effect and the website got it. The websites became more interactive and we got social media platforms. We were able to publish content a lot freer. And so there was, again, another explosion of information and connectiveness that happened in the Web 2 era. And then Web 3 kind of the term was coined, I guess, early 2021. And again, it continues to build on Web 1 with read capabilities and open source technologies. Publishing capabilities are here. The internet, again, Web 2 became more interactive, and the promise of Web 3 is it's going to become more immersive with new technologies like AR and VR. And it adds a new layer, the read and write, which is own. And so the term own can mean a lot of things, but in the context of Web3, one of the ways you can interpret it is that you can own intellectual property. You can buy things, and you can take that thing you own and create something new out of it and make more money off of it if you want to. You can sell it and make more money. And so again, it's partially this idea of ownership and community that come along with Web3, but then there's all the technologies in the background that are facilitating this, like the blockchain and artificial intelligence and AR and VR, as I mentioned. And so, so Web3 essentially is a new way of looking at the internet, again, creating more immersive experiences around communities where people come together. Community's always been a cornerstone of society, and the ideals of Web3 again are to bring people closer together, to give people a stake in these things that these communities that they own, and extract value at an equal level for everybody. So it's not only about corporations making money. Like, there's the promise of Web3 is that we kind of distribute wealth and distribute the opportunities for anybody that has an internet connection, ideally.
Yeah, it's fascinating where we came from and where we're going.
Mhm.
It's like a lot of people, and it can be scary if you think about it. When you look at all this and like, no, I don't want to do this. It's like, it's never going to catch on. But it's scary on how fast that evolution is going and moving.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I feel it's all about like sovereignty and empowering the individual users in many ways. Whereas before, everything was kind of controlled. And a lot of things that are coming up is to empower each individual in the space to own their money, to own their internet, to own everything so that they can be uniquely theirs. And it's scary because, like, if you think of crypto, if you lose that seed phrase, like, your
It's
bank
just
account's
gone.
gone
Yeah.
forever.
Mhm.
That's scary. And for somebody that writes everything on pieces of paper and loses half of his shit, like, that's scary to me. Like, I need
Yeah.
to write it on a wall almost. So but at the same time, it's very interesting it's almost like, it's going to sound like, I'll try to make an analogy, but if you look at our great grandparents, they used to hide their money in their mattress and
Mhm.
say, because I don't trust the bank. I don't, everything is like I want. It feels like it's going the same way, but through that key. So like
Mhm.
everything, like you become empowered of everything, but it's all like through the internet now, or it's like through Web3 and et cetera. So it's interesting on how we've gone that far so fast.
And I kind of want to make a point of what you just said, Pascal. There's a reason why our grandparents hid their money in their couches, or in their couches, in their mattresses, and in their fridges. I actually know that my grandparents went to go visit one of their friends' houses who was hit by a hurricane a couple of years ago, and they're like, "Can you get the money out of the fridge?" And my grandparents were like,
No,
"What are you talking about?" And they had a fridge full of money, just
No way.
cash.
No
But
ways.
like the reason for that is because the banks lost all the money at that point. Like
I
the
know.
stock market crash, right? They had all the money taken away. They lost all this money that they're investing. So of course they're going to be gripping the pearls. Like they're going to be trying to keep it away from that scenario as much as possible. But now that everything's becoming so intertwined, in this new era of privacy, digital privacy, right? And ad revenue and money kind of being flown through getting your eyeballs on ads, clicking them, becoming more addicted. There's a new incentive that's driving people to kind of be a part of these communities, because now that they own it, they can also, like you said before, both of you, they can kind of reap the benefits of that, right? And so it's kind of interesting because Web 1 was really about the democracy of information, sharing information with everyone and anyone with an internet connection. The second one was a slight evolution of interactivity that allowed for, unfortunately, some people to take advantage of that and then create models that were, uh, almost against the people that were using the products, in a sense, right? And now that we have this revitalization of, let's go back to Web 1.0, but with all the good of Web 2.0, and let's add an additional couple layers to it, decentralization, ownership. Now we have Web 3. But it's interesting to me because in Web 1 and 2, there was government enforcement that enforced ownership, right? You if you had, before a government even owned like land, or like they had like any jurisdiction over land, you can say you own this land, like you conquered it. But then if somebody is stronger and has more weapons than you, they'll conquer it from you, right? They'll kill you, they'll take it from you against your will. You have no kind of middleman to dispute that. Now, up until now, we had the government to kind of do that. And now we have code that kind of allows you to decide, oh, this person owns this digital thing. But do they? So I'm trying to lead to a question here. How real is this ownership? I understand it's kind of like a passport where you have like a code that identifies you, right? Otherwise, if they had a new passport to get a new code, if you have it stolen or lost or something, then that old one's gone, right? Then everything attached to it's gone. Then you have to get a new one. Now, that's kind of like what NFTs do, right? They have an identifier that says this is the thing, but like I can just right click, copy, paste into my Figma file that image, and then I have that image. So how much ownership really is there?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And part of what is different in Web3 is that things are becoming trustless thanks to the technology. So this is going to be a really technical answer to the question. And so what the blockchain is again, it's a series of databases spread across a big network where information is kind of recorded. And due to the nature of that structure is where the trust comes in saying, this is really something you own because the record is kept and it cannot be erased. And it's really hard to fake something on the blockchain in that way. So again, the authenticity comes out of the technology and how it's set up. It's again really hard to fake it or to copy and paste. While at the surface level, you'd see an NFT as an image. Again, the smart contract and the way that it's kind of minted, again, has that authenticity baked into it. And so when you do go to a website and you're connecting your digital wallet and you're providing this NFT as a proof point that I own this thing, that again, that technology is what is deciding this is authentic, it's true, and you are who you say you are, kind of thing. That said, again, like previous stages and in everything in this world, there are malicious actors that know how to hack wallets and steal your stuff. I think it's almost like a rite of passage for people getting into Web3. You're going to eventually get hacked and someone's going to drain your wallet and you're going to like lose money, and you'll smart enough and find there's again ways that you can protect yourself so that that's not gonna happen to you.
We all screw up. We all screw up at least once.
Yeah,
this,
and
this podcast is sponsored by Ledger.
Yeah, you gotta learn those lessons. So so the ownership is just baked into that technology. Is the short of the answer. It's just really hard to fake it. It's really hard to be deceptive in that way, and really, again, the only way to do that would be if you hack somebody's wallet and you kind of present yourself as them because you have their keys and you can do that.
It sounds like it's by design specifically meant to be very good at certain things that help build trust.
Right.
I find that it still lacks in the user experience side of things to continue building that trust, right? So the technical side of it is sort of there, but that also relies on people relying on other people who are smart enough and knowledgeable enough to read the code, right? So if it's open source, we use open source models for tons of things, and tons of products, right? But I can't read the source code of that. I don't know Python that well. I can kind of parse through it a little bit. But then, the data, right? Somebody had to have been smart enough to create the data for the AI model, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Same thing kind of like with blockchain technology. Someone had to write the contract, but that contract could have bugs in it that no one sees.
Right.
That contract could have things hidden in it that, people don't know. And then all of a sudden they give over their wallet. It drains their wallet, like you said.
Right.
So like, how do you build trust in something that people actually can't read?
hmm So those are all good points. And again, I think a lot of it is because we're so early at the stage. Even the technology, we've got like the beginnings of it. I don't know if we fully kind of appreciated what it can do and how it can do it. We still haven't like conceived like how to use these tools in a way that will work. And I think from a design perspective as well, like people are so caught up on the technology. As we were kind of getting in with Remix, we were kind of very dogmatic about Web3 and doing things the Web3 way, that you lose sight that it's not about Web3. It's not about the technology. It's about creating value for people. And so again, it's not about creating an NFT that's an image and selling that for $100,000. People are wisening up to that now, and they're like, no, I'm not going to pay $1 million for a picture. I'm paying $1 million for access to this community and for the intellectual property that I can create an instant franchise and be recognizable around the world with a picture of an ape. So that's what people are buying into. And so the trust again it's a tough piece, but again, the way that technology is built, it kind of builds that trust in by default. And you're right, there are people that can use it maliciously, as we've had, and throughout time, there's always going to be somebody that finds a way to game the system or to do something. But again, there's a lot of good people working at these problems to kind of mitigate that and to prevent bad actors from kind of hijacking the whole thing. And so it's a little bit of faith in there that we've got to trust the system, as we have throughout time. Again, nobody thought twice about creating their Facebook account back in 2005, and look how we all feel about Facebook now and what they do with our stuff, right?
That's a good point.
What do you mean? I don't understand. No. But like when you transition from, like your career, and how do you change your mindset when you're starting to design for Web3 or the crypto space? Because it's different. A lot of people have fears against it. We're still like, I think we're past the early adopter phase. But if you talk crypto to a bunch of people, they're like, nah, it's a Ponzi scheme. Like,
Right.
there's still a bunch of people. So how do you design for it? I think I want your answer on this, but it's beyond just the blur gradient trendy thing that we're all seeing now.
Sure.
I think it's
Yeah.
beyond that.
Right.
How do you design for it?
Yeah, again, I think getting too caught up about the technology is what's going to get you in this trap about like, you're building this thing only because you've got this technology and you're building around the technology. It really does come down to the value you're creating and thinking about what it is that you're putting back out into the world. And so again, we in the early stages we fell into these traps as well with Web3. We wanted to do it all the Web3 way, and what that results in is a lot of gates for people. Like if you don't have a wallet, you can't use the service, and that's not empowering. That's not what we're trying to do. And so we've kind of are now working with partners to kind of open up this technology. So again, you can sign up on our website with an email address and pay with a credit card, and the technology is all in the background and it's kind of doing its thing. And so that on one hand is again thinking about the best experience for your audience, and so you're looking at it from that perspective. And so that also takes understanding who your audience is and you picking the right tools to deliver that experience to them. So if you are going after a crypto crowd, then the wallets are fair game, and they understand how that works, and there's best practices around that. You study those and you work with those and you evolve those. But there's an angle of education that you need to kind of deliver along the way as well. And so again, if you're gonna have people sign into your website by connecting with their wallet, you need to have something there that explains to people that don't know what a wallet is, what it is, and how they can get one and how they can kind of start using your site in that way. And so it is, there's a big educational component around this. And again, the space is really new to a lot of people. And as you go and you learn, you probably have the best fresh eyes to come into the space and say, I don't get how this works. So how do you design something that I even understand, and that hopefully helps other people along the way as well, right?
Yeah, could you quickly explain what a wallet really is and how that kind of works for just the sake of this, like connecting to a website?
Yeah, so digital wallet again is like essentially that it's a wallet for the internet. It's digital. It's encrypted with security keys, and so again, it becomes a personal identifier for you. And then whatever you store inside that wallet again is used as an additional layer of identification. So think of it more like an access pass, and in that access pass, you can have money to transact. You can have NFTs, which could be anything that again prove that you are this person, you own this thing, and that unlocks like other opportunities and things like that. And so with your wallet, you can connect to different websites without sharing your email address, without thinking about a password, because you're the only one that has access to that wallet. And so as a website, I know you are you because you've connected with this wallet, and every time you connect with this wallet, you're very unique in that way, and I can attribute data to you that way in my database, and I can trust that you're going to be you. And so it does simplify the whole sign-in process. I'm really looking forward to the day where all I need is to connect my wallet to every site and not have to put an email password for everything. But again, we're not there for the masses that this is going to be the way for a while, I would imagine, and maybe ever. Like people might stick with email addresses forever, and what that would do, like in the background again, we can attribute a wallet to an email address, and you don't know you have the wallet, and we're still using the technology to kind of all the rewards that come along with it as well.
I can
And could
definitely
you?
see it. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, there's a train of thought I'm thinking when
Mhm.
it comes to crypto and like certain tokens and what. Sometimes you got to go through like 20 different things and switch to different wallets just to go buy a certain NFT. Like, it's complicated.
Oh, it's
Like some
painful.
some of the
Yeah.
things we want to buy are uber complicated. Like buying
Mhm.
Bitcoin and all like the big ones, those are easy. Like it's 1, 2, 3 step and it's done. But some you got to go through like 20 loopholes.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Is
It's
there,
always
but could that be the reason the value is high? It could, because the day it becomes so easy could potentially also be the day that the value of it decreases. Could that also be a reason, right, to offset like the the value to it?
I think just back to a point that Mitchell said earlier, I think the reason why it's so hard now is because governments are still catching up and trying to understand what this technology is. Like again, if you want to buy like crypto today, if a bank sees like crypto or Web3 in your name, like they don't want anything to do with you. I mean, it's getting better. I couldn't make like a credit card transaction with anything crypto related like a year ago. And to buy crypto, I had to go to this like exchange and basically like send an e-deposit to some random like debit account that I didn't know if I was going to get, I had to just trust that I was going to get my crypto back. And so I think that the hardships right now again is all about because of regulation and not really understanding the technology. And again, we've got these old institutions like banks that are like, what do you mean you're going to cut us out of this equation? Like back to your question about a wallet, is you essentially can be a bank on your own with crypto. You cutting up banks and you making the ability to send money and receive money like super frictionless and at a much lower cost than you would with a bank. But being the bank means you're on the hook as well. Like you're saying, Pascal, if you lose your seed phrase, you're screwed. Like there's no middleman to back you up. Like it with a credit card, if somebody steals it, you go to the bank and they'll reimburse you, or there's protections there. But you are the end line with your wallet, and if you screw up, like you're on your own, unfortunately.
I think that's probably one of the good benefits of having a bank, right?
Yeah.
By design, it's like there's like a thing in between you and problems. Like if something
Hmm.
happens, God forbid, they can always recover it. It's like, oh, that wasn't your transactions. All right, cool. Cutting it off. Cool. We'll
Right.
give you back the thing. We'll figure it out. So like there's that. Maybe that'll eventually evolve for Web3.
Hmm.
I'm wondering what are the biggest challenges that you're currently facing designing for Web3?
Again, I think the adoption piece is troublesome for some people while the Web3 world is taken off and we've got like a good user base kind of there to cater to and build. There's a lot of interest for other people that want to get in, and it's still a really big barrier. Like Pascal said, if you want to buy crypto, you got to jump through all kinds of hoops, and it's getting really expensive in some ways. Like the easy things like Bitcoin and Ethereum come at a cost because so many people want to use it, which means the transaction fees go up. And then you've got these other like blockchains that work just as good, and they're faster, they're cheaper, they're more environmentally friendly, but getting that currency on that blockchain is like, again, jumping through loops and holes to kind of like make it happen. And so that's one of the barriers. And then again, I think just getting too caught up on the technology and being dogmatic about Web3 is the other trap hole I'm finding, that we again keep learning over and over that it doesn't pay to be dogmatic about Web3. Like, it's about understanding your audience. It's about creating value for them. And then all that, the rest of it, like whether you use the technology, whether you put it in the background, it doesn't matter. Like, you can't lose focus on your audience and the value you're providing, because then you don't have a business and you won't survive if you're not creating value at the end of the day. And so again, the biggest part of Web3 is getting caught in this trap of doing it the Web3 way. It's again all about your audience and what's the best thing for them that you should be thinking about.
Yeah, and not really talking too much about the technology side of
Yeah.
things. Like what you said, the benefit for them.
Yeah, people don't care. I mean, again, when you got into Facebook, you didn't care like what database they were using and about cloud technology. You just cared because that you were interacting with your friends. It was creating value there. You're connecting with people across the world that you hadn't seen. You're catching up on old high school buddies and that kind of thing. And it wasn't sold as like, come and use a database, and come use this cloud technology. Like,
I mean,
people
I don't
care about
know.
that.
Cloud technology gets me pretty hot. I don't know about
I
you
know it
guys.
does. I get excited about it. In reality, I love cloud tech, but again, it's never sold as cloud tech. It's this ability to connect anywhere from any computer without owning like software on the computer. So again, always comes back to like, what are the problems you're solving and what value are you creating, and not what technology you're using, and doing it this way because it's the way to do it. It's always about the end user and the value you're creating for them.
I know you're a busy guy and we got to
Mhm.
be mindful of your time too
No
for
worries.
this, but we haven't had a chance to talk about Remix and all the cool
Mhm.
stuff you're doing over there. And
Oh,
I
thanks.
think like honestly, it's fantastic work. So like I want to give a chance for you to plug in the
Mhm.
company you work for, what you do, et cetera, because I think it's a very cool space. And can you please talk about like what you guys do, what you do over there, and why
Sure.
is it such a cool space?
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for that opportunity. Yeah. So I work at a company called remx.xyz. We started out as a marketplace for selling digital wearables. And over the year, we got into it at a good time. The market was still pretty healthy at the time. And as the years gone by, um, the market conditions have kind of made it harder to operate in this space. In that, again, I think we're just a bit too early to the scene to have people see value in buying digital wearables, and also having places that they can utilize them. And so again, the mass adoption isn't quite there. And so thankfully, through this time, we've been building a really strong community around us. We've been kind of working with creators, and we've been taking time to get to know them and understand the challenges they've been running into. And so we're at a point now where we're repackaging our offering. And so we started out as a platform for creators to create digital wearables very easily with 3D. There was no need to understand 3D software. There was no need to understand blockchain or smart contracts or any of that stuff. We kind of took care of all of that. And so we still have those tools. But again, we see the problems for creators being that they are working on lots of different projects in different places, and bringing people from different places together is challenging. Tool in Web3 that people seem to want to use all the time is Discord, but it's really hard to use that, and creators don't have the time to manage or host a Discord server. And so there's that aspect of it. And then there's the other challenge when you're working in the Web3 space is if all you know your audience has is a wallet address, it's really hard to communicate back with them and sell them stuff or to share updates and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, we're repackaging our offering to become a community platform for creators where they can create exclusive memberships for their community around them. And using our tooling, they can kind of create rewards for being members of this community. So we're giving creators a direct line to communicate with the people from their different communities. They can kind of bring them all to one place and communicate with them in a simple way. Like again, Discord, it can be a lot to use. It's a Slack-like app, and it can be really overwhelming in a lot of ways. And so then we're also giving them tools to create digital wearables and physical connected products and all kinds of digital products that you can think of. And as a creator, you can decide whether you want to give them to your community or whether you want to sell them. And then another challenge we've heard with these creators is of course, they're in this Web3 space and they've been working at it for a while, but they've been a creator longer than Web3's been around, and so they've got a lot of people in their community or in their audience that don't have access to Web3 or are still kind of intimidated by it. And so again, we want to lower that barrier of entry for these audiences to be able to sign up with an email address and pay for their digital products using credit cards. And so again, we've seen these challenges of bringing people together as well as like creating digital products and selling them. And so again, that's what the new remix is going to be. And again, learn this, just getting back to our roots in product and speaking with our community and understanding that the challenges they have. And it's been met with a lot of excitement from the people we're working on. And we're getting really close to launching our pilot program where, again, we have hastily put this package together and now we need to kind of validate it and experiment with it and learn from it. And we're going to be doing a lot of like the smoke and mirrors, making stuff happen behind the scenes as humans. And again, as we see ideas validate or we're seeing that they're paying off and creating value, we'll kind of create the mechanisms and invest the effort to automate these processes so that it works smoother for everyone.
Yeah, I think that Paul Graham has a great quote. It's a when you're early in something, do things that don't scale.
Yeah.
Right. Test
Yeah.
out the idea, see if it works, and then if there's enough validation that proves that it's going to be something worthwhile to create, then you figure out how to scale it.
Yeah. No,
So-
and it's a skill to like think in that way and like to not again just kind of jump at the best idea that's coming up. That like again spending the time speaking to your audience and understanding their pain points and then experimenting with different ways to alleviate that and seeing really like what's resonating and what's creating value before you really invest a ton of time and effort to make it a real thing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I want to end on one question. I think we'll start asking everyone this question when we end the podcast, because the podcast name is Shaping Design, and it's really about how our guests are helping to shape the world through design. And I want to know, how has design helped shape you?
Oh, that's a good question. Again, I think it's always been part of my identity as a creator, and then learning about design has been good. I'm sure, like a lot of designers, you just become very analytical about how things work out in the world and see, that it's shaped me in that way. So again, when I'm using products or when I'm engaging with brands and that kind of thing, I pick up on how they're doing stuff, and sometimes it's like, let me take my notebook out and use that for later kind of thing. Or yeah, and so it's shaped me in that. And in more recent years where I've been doing a lot more customer research, I think it's helped me become a better human because I've learned how to listen and not just speak all the time. And so hopefully my wife has benefited from this newfound skill that I have acquired. But I'm always surprised how hard a skill listening is and how much work it takes to really like hone it in and become a good listener.
Awesome. Well, this has been a pleasure. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Yeah. No, it's fun chatting with you all and happy to come on anytime. I appreciate you inviting me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have to. I want to talk more next time about NFTs because I have some more questions and I've thought through some more of those things, but we'll save
Sure.
it for a whole nother episode.
No,
That's
I'd love
another
to.
whole new episode.
Yeah, we can. I'd love to. I love talking about design. I love talking about Web3, NFTs, like all that stuff.
Yeah, and
Anytime.
I think that maybe Pascal and I we should think about how we can maybe even use that platform. So
For sure. I mean,
think-
when we're ready, I'll definitely connect with you and we can look at some ways, strategize around that. But for all the listeners, like again, if I could impart one thing about Web3, the best advice to kind of get into Web3 is to just start dipping your toes and experimenting, finding a wallet like MetaMask and maybe going through the headache of buying your like $100 or something of crypto, and just going through that experience is really eye-opening and a valuable like educational experience, and then using that out in the real world as well. It get your feet wet with what's kind of out there because there's a lot of cool
Agreed.
stuff happening now.
There is. It's a great space.
Totally, yeah.
Awesome.
all right.
Thank you so much, Filippo.
Well, thank you both. It was great
Appreciate it.
chatting. We'll talk soon.